The official story painted the night as harmless: drinks, laughter, board games, and football on TV. But the timeline is where cracks began to show. According to the statements, most of the party began winding down between 1 and 1:30 in the morning. One by one, guests slipped off to bedrooms upstairs, or couches in the living room. Only a few remained awake long enough to notice Tamla outside on the deck. Jean Meyer's boyfriend said he saw her there when he got up in the night. Others said they assumed she was last to fall asleep, enjoying her cigarette in the cool night air. But when you look at the accounts, the times don't quite add up. Some placed her outside at 1:30. Others insist she was still moving around closer to 2 o'clock. The security system in the home logged the door opening at 1:47 a.m. and the patio door being opened again minutes later. If that was Tamla, it means she was still outside long after most of the others went to bed. Then comes the unexplained gap. From 2 a.m. until almost 9 in the morning, nobody claims to have seen or heard anything. Tamla's body was discovered in the backyard at 7:30 a.m., but 911 wasn't called until 8:45. And that delay raises more questions than answers. On the call, Jean Meyer says she found her best friend face down in the grass, but her tone is strangely calm. Not the kind of panic you might expect if you woke up to find someone lifeless in your yard. She even tells dispatch she is not breathing, she is gone, as if she had already concluded Tamla was dead before any help arrived. When investigators got to the scene, they noted the way her body was positioned. Face down, one arm bent awkwardly beneath her, the other stretched out. One shoe had come off. Her wrist was fractured. She had blunt force trauma to her head and multiple abrasions. The theory was that she fell more than 15 feet from the deck above, hitting the ground in a way that broke bones and ended her life on impact. But the medical examiner's report only fueled more doubt. There were abrasions on her shins, cuts on her face, and a dislocated wrist. Her teeth had been chipped. Her neck showed signs of trauma. Some of the wounds didn't look consistent with a simple fall. Others looked like she could have been in a struggle. And then there's the question of alcohol. Toxicology results showed Tamla's blood alcohol level was .238, nearly 3 times the legal drive limit. There was also a trace of marijuana and a small amount of Xanax in her system. That became the backbone of official explanation. She had too much to drink, she slipped, she fell. But her friends and family did not accept that answer. They knew Tamla as someone who could handle herself. Yes, she enjoyed a drink, but she wasn't careless, she wasn't clumsy, and they could not reconcile the severity of her injuries with the story of an accidental fall. There is another element that has haunted the case from the start. Tamla was the only Black woman at the party. In a community where she stood out, surrounded by people who did not look like her, the context matters. Her family has said publicly that race played a role in how the case was investigated and dismissed. They believe if Tamla had been white, her death would have been treated differently. They believe the gaps, the contradictions, and the unanswered questions would have been taken more seriously. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation eventually reviewed the case after public pressure, but they too concluded that Tamla's death was an accident. To her loved ones, that decision only deepened the wound, because if this was an accident, why do so many things about the night not add up? The timeline doesn't match. The 911 call is unsettling. The injuries are too severe, and the delay in calling for help hangs over everything. Tamla was not reported immediately. She was not treated like someone who could have been saved. She was treated as though her fate was sealed before anyone picked up the phone. Her story has become a symbol. For her family, it is the fight to demand accountability when the system fails. For advocates, it is the reminder that not all cases are handled equally. For the public, it is the nagging thought that the truth may still be hidden inside the walls of that house. The statements from the guests should have closed gaps, but instead they opened more. Jean Meyer said she went to bed around 1:30 a.m. and saw Tamla still outside smoking. Another guest said they later saw her closer to 2 o'clock. One claimed they locked the door behind her, assuming she would come in when she was ready. But the timestamps from the home's security system complicate that. The back door opened at 1:47 a.m., then again at 1:57. If Tamla went out for one last cigarette, why would the door register opening twice? Was someone else moving around the house while everyone was supposedly asleep? Even stranger, some guests admitted they didn't check on Tamla at all the next morning. They simply assumed she had left. Her car, however, was still in the driveway. Her belongings were inside. It was only when one of them glanced out of a basement window that they spotted the body in the grass. When the 911 call went out, Jean Meyer's boyfriend was the one who spoke to dispatch. His tone raised eyebrows. He described her as stiff and said she must have fallen. The calmness, almost rehearsed, didn't sound like a reaction of someone discovering a friend dead in their backyard. By the time the police arrived, the scene was already compromised. Guests had walked in and out, some even leaving the house before statements were collected. And yet investigators concluded almost immediately that this was an accident. They did not treat the backyard as a crime scene. They did not preserve potential evidence. They did not separate witnesses for interviews. Tamla's family, devastated and desperate for answers, pushed back. They hired attorney Ralph Fernandez, who publicly challenged the findings. He pointed out inconsistencies in the autopsy. He noted the cuts, the abrasions, and the chipped tooth, injuries that should suggest more than a fall. He called her death highly suspicious and said the evidence pointed to a struggle. And then came the backlash. Local officials pushed back hard against Fernandez, insisting the evidence supported an accidental fall. They dismissed suggestions of foul play. They closed the case. To the family, that felt like the door being slammed in their faces. But the public wasn't finished. Social media lit up with outrage. Hashtags demanded justice for Tamla. Celebrities and activists drew attention to her case, linking it to broader conversations about race, policing, and accountability. Why did the authorities rush to call it an accident? Why were the timelines messy, the interviews inconsistent, the handling of the scene so careless? Tamla's loved ones believe her story was written off because she was a Black woman in a room full of people who were not. They believe her death was treated as less important, her life as less worthy of investigation. And whether intentional or not, the result was the same. A grieving family left with questions, and a community left to wonder what really happened in that house. The chilling part is this. Almost 7 years later, the truth is still unclear. There are no convictions, no official recognition of foul play, just a mother gone too soon and a timeline that refuses to make sense. Tamla Horsford was 40 years old, a wife, a mother of 5 boys, and by all accounts, the kind of woman whose presence lit up every room. On the night of November 3rd, 2018, she went to an overnight birthday gathering in Forsyth County, Georgia. It was meant to be a casual sleepover party for adults, hosted by Jean Myers. Football was on the TV, games were played, food and drinks were shared. Tamla brought tequila as her contribution, and she laughed and smoked cigarettes on the back deck while the others mingled inside. By morning, Tamla was gone. Her body was found face down in the backyard, lying in the grass just below the wooden deck. She was barefoot. Her injuries were extensive, and the explanation offered, that she accidentally fell from the deck in the middle of the night, has never sat right with her family or the many people who have looked at the details. The guests at the party offered little to settle the questions. Their stories overlapped in some places and contradicted in others. Jean Myers, the host, defended her home and insisted there was nothing sinister. Others said Tamla had simply been drinking too much and may have stumbled. But the picture those statements painted never aligned cleanly with evidence. Tamla's family continued to fight for answers. They have been open about their belief that her case was mishandled from the beginning. They want it reopened and examined with the care and seriousness that they feel it deserves. They want the inconsistencies addressed and the questions answered, not brushed aside. The case was briefly reopened in 2020 after public pressure, but closed again with the same conclusion: accidental fall. Officials said they found no evidence of foul play, but the doubts remain, and for many, the official story has never explained away the details. What happened on that November night in 2018 may never be fully known, but the questions remain louder than the answers. And her name continues to echo as a reminder that not every case closed is truly a case closed. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to like the video, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode we cover. This is Midnight Verdict, all facts, no fluff.